Doctor, it's an honor to have you on. I wanted to give a proper introduction. It's an honor to speak with you. I think I missed that Steven Spielberg just happened to be producing one of his first movies in a long time called Disclosure Day, and that's out in a couple months. So
yes, I guess I should have trademarked that when I started the disclosure movement in the 1990s. But there you go. I mean, it's I caught on. I mean, it is time for all this information to come out. And you know, my uncle worked on the lunar landing project with the lunar module, and I was a little kid when we put the first man on the moon. And I learned some things when I was quite young, and saw some things when I was quite young. It was quite clear that we weren't alone in the universe, and that it was the biggest cover-up of what people call the deep state in history, and it's a dangerous secrecy being played. So we are at the breakout point of this coming to the public. The problem is the cacophony of different voices confusing the issue. And one of my biggest concerns is why, with great respect for the vice president, what was said on your show on Friday last week, because people need to understand that advanced technologies, which are interstellar, are going to look like magic or supernatural. It is something they're not. They're extraordinary, but they're not supernatural. So let's take a little exercise here, Benny, for just a minute. Let's go down the road. Here is Thomas Jefferson's house where I live. If you were to show him your iPhone or this transmission, you would be a sorcerer. You'd probably be considered something from another dimension. You would be considered a ghost. You probably burned at the stake in Salem, Massachusetts for having an iPhone, because it would be considered magic. So every technology of an extremely advanced civilization looks like magic to a lesser one. It is not that it's supernatural or demonic. And actually, when I was at the Vatican with Pope John Paul, senior theologian, Monsignor Balducci, we brought this issue up because it was already out in the atmosphere, let's say. And he said, and he was a demonologist, and Monsignor Balducci said, no, neither angels nor demons require flying saucers. And he started laughing. And he was making the point that the technology and science behind this is really what confuses people, because it's so exotic. And this is where you have to get into about 80 years of lost physics and lost technology, that when people see these things, they're completely flummoxed. And first of all, 80% or more of all the UFOs seen are man-made anti-gravity craft. And my uncle's company have them, Northrop Grumman, Lockheed Skunk Works, Raytheon. We know who's building them. We know where the facilities are. And this has been handed off to the president and to law enforcement because it's a criminal operation. One thing that we're getting very serious about this is that their senior law enforcement is aware, in a task force, and I won't say who, that these have been illegal and criminal operations involving murder, abductions, embezzlement of trillions of dollars of funds over the decades, and insubordination and treason. So it is a very serious issue. I think the president is waking up to it slowly, because we have people who have been providing that information. This briefing document, which is a redacted version of what he has, you can all get a copy of on our website. But I would like to offer to you the unredacted version of it. It's very sensitive for you to convey over to your friend, Mr. Vance. But I think that, because he needs to get read in on this properly before speaking about it too much. It's a very serious issue. And I will tell you, if this is disclosed improperly, it'll be 1,000 times worse than COVID. And I think that when you're talking about the fact we are being visited by advanced civilizations, they are not hostile. If they were hostile, we'd be gone. But we have approached them very hostilely. We have literally downed at least 1,000 or more of their spacecraft using illegal electromagnetic pulse weapons. And I know where they're being used and how they're being used. And we have captured those bodies, some living, some dead. And Mr. Gates was correct in saying that there are some gruesome programs being run by military where they've been trying to combine DNA of these creatures with humans, and they come out with these monstrous looking things that are used to abduct people. So everyone's here of alien abductions. It's not the extraterrestrials doing it. It's a covert human program. And we know this, and we can prove it. So this is a huge story. It's the biggest scandal in the history of the United States in its founding. I think for our 250th anniversary, we should be liberated from the secrecy, and these extraordinary technologies that could benefit all of humanity need to begin to be looked at, to be brought out. So that's what we're doing with the Disclosure Project.
Doctor, there's so many follow-ups there. I don't even know where to begin. Let's perhaps let's start at the beginning.
Sure.
You began your comments by saying that you saw things as a child with your family who was working on the lunar programs and working on those programs were classified. So assuredly, your family had classified access to some top secret programs. What is it?
It was just my uncle working on the lunar module. Yeah.
What is it that you saw that started this process for you?
Well, it was a coincidence, if you believe in coincidences, which I actually don't, that I saw a UFO when I was 8 or 9 in the sky near our home in North Carolina. I grew up in Charlotte, North Carolina, but he was working on the lunar module in Bethpage, New York. That's where Grumman was, that built the lunar module, landed on the moon first time. So, but I also heard things because it's aerospace and it's the aerospace industry. And when I became a young I'm a trauma doctor, emergency and trauma, I began a process of pulling together a lot of whistleblowers. And this was in the early 90s. We now have over 750 whistleblowers that I have debriefed who have been in top secret positions, CIA, Department of Defense, aerospace, other corporations. And so we have a huge archive on this, and we're distilling that into the briefing materials for members of Congress and White House. But I think that we're completely a private, non-governmental entity, and we're self-funded by contributions. But our purpose is to fix a quiet coup d'etat that happened around the time I was born, I was born in 55. So in the late 1950s, Eisenhower lost control of these UFO-related programs because he wanted to make peaceful contact with these civilizations, but also begin to bring out the energy technologies that would terminate oil. Our whole mess in the Middle East is because we're still dependent on oil, but we haven't needed it since I was born. And I think that this is an enormous macroeconomic and technology story, much more than it is about aliens. Those civilizations from other star systems are simply concerned about our proclivity to destroy the planet, right? And to fight each other. And as we started going out into space, a big red flag went up and where they said, well, we better watch what's going on here. But they're by no means hostile to us. I think it's the other way around. I think they're more concerned about our hostility. But see, this coup d'etat that happened under Eisenhower never got fixed. President Kennedy tried to, and I can assure you that is why he got killed.
Wow.
Okay. Same thing with Marilyn Monroe. I have a document that's pretty much her death warrant from the CIA, dated a couple of days before they found her dead, because she was going to hold a press conference to tell the whole world what Jack Kennedy had told her about the objects from outer space that were recovered in the 40s. A clear reference to a couple of the accidents or downing of UFOs back in the mid and late 40s. And it's an official CIA document. Now, it's not been declassified. I released it because my team determined, speaking of Department of Justice, that these programs are treasonous and illegal. And because they're illegal, we have every right to release that information. You cannot use the National Security Act to keep something secret if the program is itself treasonous.
So your contention is that advanced civilizations have visited this Earth and this country using technologies that would seem like magic, that would seem out of our
right.
out of anything that we could possibly imagine, and that the U.S. government has shot them down.
Well, compartmented operations working under U.S. top secret cover, but illegally have done so. See, and this is where you get into a very quick discussion of how I reached this conclusion. In 1993, I'm working as an emergency doctor in North Carolina. I was flown up to brief the director of the CIA for President Clinton, because they had began to look into this and they were blocked, and they knew they were being blocked. And they knew that there was a had been sort of a coup d'etat that separated the oversight of the Congress and the president and White House over these super secret projects. And when I first was invited to the meeting, I thought that was ridiculous. I didn't believe the FedEx I got said they cannot get information on this and they're being blocked from getting it. And I said, well, the president has an all access pass. And my contact said, oh, no, he doesn't. And so that's when I realized we were in a huge amount of trouble here in terms of our governance and what people call the deep state. This is the crown jewel of deep state activity is the UFO issue. There's no question about it. Why? Because of the technology. I mean, the technologies that we have studied and reverse engineered and put into deployment for surveillance, for aircraft that fly at 100,000 miles per hour and make a right-hand turn without decelerating. Those are ours. If you saw on CNN and Fox News, that Tic Tac that everyone saw, that's a Lockheed Skunk Works device. It was not alien. And yet it completely confused our military command because those guys had not been read into those programs. So the left hand doesn't even know the right hand is doing, and it is dangerous. The other problem is that those technologies have been used in false flag operations to sort of deceive political leaders, such as Mr. Vance and the president, but also the people in Congress. For example, what Mr. Gates said and what Mr. Burchett recently said on a news show is information I received in the 1990s about these weird looking creatures that are not extraterrestrials, but they're man-made monsters, like a Frankenstein monster and this sounds like science fiction, but it isn't, that have been used to have on board man-made UFOs. We mastered gravity control in 1954, the year before I was born. And so the problem becomes if you have that kind of technology and you're a psychopath or a sociopath that view yourself above the law and the Constitution, you can run amok and do it. A scientist I know, Dr. Jacques Vallée, has a CIA document describing in 1985 using man-made UFOs, reverse engineered from real ET ones, to abduct, quote, peasants, is what it says, in Brazil and Argentina in 1985 for its psychological warfare value. So you see, I'm afraid Mr. Vance was the victim of a psy-op. And this is one of the big psy-ops or psychological warfare operations, is to convince people that, well, they don't exist at all. That was it for decades. Now they do exist, but they're a threat to us, which they're not. And if that isn't good enough, they're not aliens at all, but they're demons working from the right hand of Satan, which is not true either. So they're trying to push forward agendas to sort of deceive our leaders and the public, and they keep changing what the deception is. But the main narrative is they will tell you anything but the truth. So what we have to do is get to the bottom of the truth, and the best way to do it is through these hundreds of whistleblowers who work in those projects. Now, so far, Congress has not called any of them to testify. The ones they've had are secondhand or minor whistleblowers. We have people I'm working with who are operational at black sites, covert sites, where they are doing these activities, where they are doing these human experiments, where they are downing these ET craft. I know them personally. I've been in their classified choppers. I was almost killed after I got back from one of those trips in a mysterious accident. I had to have 4 surgeries. I was critically injured. But what I tell people is that this is a huge story, and it's not little green and gray men. It's really about a covert program that got out of control in the late 50s and is still out of control and is the greatest threat to national security. The secrecy around this subject far exceeds the dangers of China, Iran, and Russia because it's the enemy within. It's covert programs in our country that have these technologies, and they have used them criminally for decades. Now, the good news is, because of actions, not so much in Congress or the White House yet, but by certain law enforcement entities that are confidential, that organization is on the run, and they know that we know who they are. And I'm not going to sit and list a bunch of names right here, right now, but we do need at some point to have an attorney general who will begin to make quite clear people should be prosecuted up to and including treason for what they've been doing and are doing. And I think that this is a very serious matter, because when you have, like when I briefed the CI director for Clinton and later the head of the Defense Intelligence Agency, they honestly had never been read into this. And I was the first person to do it. I was taking my time away from my medical practice and my 4 little daughters. And I'm nobody. I have no clearance. I don't want a clearance. I don't need it. Same thing when I was at the Senate Intelligence Committee, SCIF, you know, to get information from Mr. Rubio and Warner, who were chair and co-chair of Senate Intelligence. They didn't have any information. Now they do. But it's because we have stitched together, you know, the information from nearly 1,000 whistleblowers. And that's what we're providing as a briefing. I would offer that to you and to Mr. Vance. It looks like he's quite interested in the matter.
It does. And I think that his interest is earnest and in good faith.
Yes, I agree.